Here we go. So my name is Sumeet. I'm one of the founders of Exiled Racers. Exiled Racers is a NFT project as well as a algorithmic racing and predictions game. We're built on top of the Moonbeam platform, which is one of the parachains here on Polkadot. And today, I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about what it's like to build a Web3 game and what is essentially a Web2 dominated gaming world, right? And so kind of the pains behind that, kind of things we've seen, but then also strategies that we're taking to help kind of bridge that gap between Web2 users and Web3 gamers and make it seamless so that they have no idea that they're even using Web3 technologies. We'll also be doing a live race on stage, so everybody in the audience here, anybody watching online, will be able to actually experience Exiled Racers as a predictor. And so I'll explain that to you in a little bit as we get further along into the presentation. But at the end, we'll be actually watching the presentation live. So what is Exiled Racers? So, like I mentioned, we're an NFT project as well as an algorithmic racing and prediction game. But we think we're a little bit further in that in terms of from a high level, right? And so we feel like we built kind of this world's first concept, which is this cross-chain NFT fantasy racing and prediction infrastructure that allows any community, whether that's a Web3 community, a Web2 community, even in real life, like we're here today, it gives any community GameFi utility to generate engagement, right? So they can engage their audiences using our technology, our games, in a way that hasn't been done before. And so before we step any further, I think we have to acknowledge our art team and the NFTs that go behind our games. It's a big component. We are kind of a NFT project first and then a game second. And so you can kind of see the quality of the NFTs. We spent hundreds of hours building these NFTs. They're not just like your standard kind of 8-bit NFT. They're built in 4K. Each of these ships, as you'll see soon, was built also in 3D to race. And so we wanted to make sure that when we built our project that holders not only got utility in terms of the game that they're playing, but also a real piece of art that was meticulously thought through and worked on for years. The game itself, was really built out of kind of a need from our team. So myself and my co-founders, we met. We're all based in Brooklyn, New York, and we met playing sports. And we were always talking about how we just don't have time to play games anymore, right? And so we used to play games when we were younger. Maybe we still play a little bit of gaming right now, but it's so hard to get into gaming now because there's so many kids out there or people full-time that are professionals that are just grinding away and getting better at games. It's almost impossible to win. And so we wanted to build something that was a low-touch, kind of high-reward gaming infrastructure that doesn't require you to grind, to spend hours and hours and hours trying to earn coins, but instead is more strategic, very easy to use, something that's modeled after fantasy sports so that you don't have to spend a ton of time. You can spend a little bit of time and then enjoy the banter, enjoy the community that's around, and be a part of something larger than just you playing by yourself on your console. And so the way the game works is there's 3 NFT types, right? There's pilots, there's racecrafts, and there's boosters. Each of these NFTs has attributes associated with them, right? So for a pilot, that might be focus or strength, or stamina. For a racecraft, that could be speed, acceleration, handling, typical attributes you would see in a racing game. Where the difference comes here, and this is why it's different than kind of your traditional game where you're controlling, is that our game is simulated, it's algorithmic, right? And so all of the attributes that you have for your NFTs are being placed into the algorithm, and the algorithm then moves your ship forward 5 times per second using your attributes and some probability baked in to actually come up with an outcome. And so it kind of eliminates the need for you to have to practice for hours and hours on a racing game. You play your best stack of NFTs, and once that's entered, we're then able to, because it's algorithmic, we're able to then simulate the race over 1,000 times. And what that generates for us is odds, right? So we can say, racer 1 won 30% of the time, racer 3 won 12% of the time. All right, now go ahead and make a bet, right? What do you think is going to win, right? Is it going to be racer 1? If you think it's racer 1, the favorite, you're going to get a certain number of points, right? If you pick the underdog, you're going to get even more points, right? And you can see kind of how this infrastructure plays directly in hand with kind of our next step from here, which is taking Exiled into kind of the online betting world, right? And so we're partnering with Zeitgeist, which is another parachain here on Polkadot, to provide our predictions infrastructure, for Exiled racers, right? And I think it's a little bit easier if I show you a little bit of a video. We don't have a ton of time, and I do want to get to the live video, so I want to make sure you guys get an idea of what the gameplay looks like, kind of, the back end of what I've kind of been explaining to you in a visual way, so it might make a little bit more sense. And the visuals have been updated since. This is kind of a little bit of an older video, but let's see if we can. So as you can see the ships moving around. This is a simulated version. You can see kind of the leaderboard moving. The idea, like I mentioned before, is to go ahead and pick your NFTs. You can see the stats moving around, and those are the attributes. Once everyone is entered, you then predict. The prediction gives you certain points, and then you can finish and watch the game. And so like I was mentioning, we're trying to make this as lightweight, as low touch as possible, on purpose, right? People don't have time. You're competing against the eyeballs of whatever else they're using on the internet, right? And so we're trying to create a community first, and then the game as well on top of it that gives them something to do, and also give other communities, so it could be another DApp, it could be another ecosystem, the ability to integrate these types of games into their community and engage their own audiences. Let's see if I can get back into the presentation. So we're going to be doing a live picking right now, right? So if you have your phone available and you want to play along, go to decoded.exiledracers.com. It's free to play. You don't need an NFT. You don't need a wallet. You don't need anything like that to sign up. All you need is an email address, and you can set up your racer name. This will be your racer name going forward. That's basically a username to find you on the leaderboard. Make sure you go ahead and register. You're then going to go ahead and predict. So there's a number of racers who are going to be racing at the end of this talk, and so they have their odds already in the game. So you can see their win percentage as a chance of their likelihood of winning based on running the simulation a number of times. You can also go ahead and click on their stack, see their speed, their attributes, check out the track itself to see if it has more turns, if it has more straights, and kind of make a decision on who you think is going to win first place, and also make sure you pick second place as well. And then at the end of the event, we're going to watch live. Whoever's on top of the leaderboards, I have T-shirts for you guys. You can find me afterwards once we do that. So let's make sure you go to decoded.exiledracers.com. I think I'm blocking the QR code, but yeah. So you should be able to get to it now. And it's a little bit about what we're talking about next, which is kind of the onboarding experience that you guys are all experiencing right now as well, right? And so this is kind of the bulk of what I wanted to talk about, which is kind of how is it building a Web3 game right now in kind of this Web2 universe, right? And so for Exiled Racers in particular, and this is generally true for a lot of games, is that it's kind of in a microcosm of like a mix of a bunch of different things, right? So obviously there's Web3 gamers and Web3 general users, but for Exiled Racers, we're also targeting kind of this larger audience of Web2 users that are in fantasy esports, but then also in fantasy betting, right? And so that group of users, is enormous. It's close to 500 million users. Online betting, obviously, is close to 70 billion in market size, per year. So it's an enormous, enormous market, which of the vast majority are not on Web3, right? And so I think Bjorn yesterday during his talk was talking about how even if you included all of Web3, the total number of users is really, really small. And so to build a game or to build an app or anything that's just solely focused on Web3, I think is kind of limiting in terms of your overall user base. And so, so how do we actually get to these fantasy esports, these fantasy betting users, or just general users who are going to be interested in our game that don't have any knowledge about Web3 at all? And so, we've kind of broken it down on our side into levels. So, what we consider a level is kind of like the user's level, right? And so, level 1 for us is kind of the single chain gaming. This is kind of where most Web3 games are right now, right? And so, whether you're on Polkadot or Moonbeam or Polygon or whatever chain you're on, most games are solely in one chain, right? And so, there's a number of pros and cons to that. But there is a lot of friction that causes for Web 2 users. So accessibility, right? So immediately, right? Like if you're a Web 2 user, you don't know anything about Web 3, you're hit with, where's your wallet, right? People don't know what a wallet is. You have to now explain to them how to get a wallet, right? Next thing up, we're on Moonbeam. How do you install Moonbeam on MetaMask? How do you install Moonbeam on another network? That's step 2, right? Then step 3, you have, okay, now you need Glimmer. How do you get Glimmer? You got to bridge it from one asset. You got to get it to another place. You need NFTs. Start playing, right? So there's all these barriers of entry to play a game, right? And you're seeing this across a lot of games where, just to get started, you need to spend an exorbitant amount of money just to get going, right? If you don't have the money, you're not going to play, right? There's no way for you to actually get involved. Then there's the scalability, which is you're limited to the growth of that chain, right? And so if you're on Polygon, you're limited to the user base on Polygon, right? If you're on Avalanche, it's the same thing. Moonbeam is the same way. When we launched with Moonbeam, Moonbeam hadn't even launched yet. We took a bet going on Moonbeam on purpose, and you'll see why in a second. But you're launching into a chain that has no users, right? So you're going to drastically reduce how many people you can actually join. Limited NFTs, standard, 10,000 NFTs we're releasing, right? Well, guess what? You have 10,000 players maximum, right? So, how do you overcome that barrier, right? And then obviously sustainability, right? It's like, how do you continue to grow Web3? If you don't continue to grow Web3, you're not going to get new users at all, right? So this is what we consider like level 1 kind of gaming. This is kind of where I would say most Web3 games are right now. Now, why we chose Moonbeam, and I think if you listened to Derek yesterday, I think you'll know why this is the case. So Moonbeam is EVM compatible, right? So that means that we're able to go cross-chain on Moonbeam into any other Web3 ecosystem, right? So if you're on Ethereum, if you're on Binance, if you're on Polygon, whatever you're on, we don't need you to join the Moonbeam network. The Moonbeam network for us is our hub, right? It's where our data lives, it's where our game lives, it's where our NFTs live, right? But if you want to race and you want to be on Polygon, that's fine because of the technology that Moonbeam provides us, right? So that allows us to then expand past, just the core set of, users that we can have on Moonbeam. But then on the other side of it, because Moonbeam is also attached to Polkadot and Polkadot ecosystem, we have XCM that we're able to use to actually get across messages and things that go to the other set of products on Polkadot, right? And so like I mentioned before, we're able to use a product like Zeitgeist, which is on another parachain on Polkadot, using XCM, using APIs, and that gives us the ability to bring tools in to our game that maybe we wouldn't have access to before. We would have had to build those individually on ourselves, but now we're able to then collaborate across both ecosystems, not only on Polkadot, but then also cross-chain. So what Moonbeam really gives us is the ability to kind of cover all of Web3. But like I had mentioned before, Web3 is just a small piece of the puzzle, right? That's levels 1 and 2. Level 3 really is the last two kind of components, which is our fantasy esports, our fantasy betting, and generally just gamers on Web 2, right? And that subset is much larger than the Web 3 community. And so how do we bring these people into our game now that we've covered kind of all chains and kind of all Web 3 users? How do we bring the Web 2 users on board? And so the way we've devised it is kind of like a tried and true method. We all come from kind of SaaS backgrounds, Web 2 SaaS backgrounds. There's the concept of a freemium product, right? Which means you get to try something for free before you actually go and buy it, right? You don't need to actually have all the NFTs. You don't need to have anything to actually get started. And so the way our funnel works is the Web 2 users come in from the top. They're allowed to spectate and predict. That's what you guys are all doing in this room right now when you're playing our kind of our pick'em game, which means you don't need a wallet, you don't need NFT, you don't need any crypto, you don't even need to know what crypto is. You're coming in, you're playing a pick'em game, similar to how you would pick, fantasy football or fantasy, college basketball, whatever it is that you're into. It's a very similar game. It's free to play. You don't need any type of knowledge beyond that, right? Now, let's say you went on and you won. Like, let's say you came in first place, you made all the predictions correct. We then give you rewards, right? And those are in the form of Web3, right? And so at that point, the user then needs to have a wallet, right? So the idea here is that you're bringing, you're introducing Web3 concepts to people when they actually need them, right? Not right off the bat. Like, you don't need Web3 right off the bat, right? You need Web3 when you need a reward. You need Web3 when you need an NFT to play, right? And as some of these people, get more and more into the game, they're going to want to actually race. And so we have a rentals marketplace coming out soon where you'll be able to rent for a really low cost. We'll have, or you can actually go in and actually purchase the NFT themselves. And that's as you move further down the funnel, right? And so we've really built, a way for whether you're a Web3 maxi and you want to be at the bottom of this funnel already, or you're a Web3, you don't know anything about Web3, you could be at the top of this funnel. We've built this way for people to easily kind of find their way into Web3 in a nice, approachable way, right? And if you take a step back from there, we think of ourselves as the kind of top of the funnel, right? So that means we're kind of the top of the funnel for all Web3, right? And this applies to other games that are similar to this, is that we're building this growth engine not only for us, but also for every app, that's here, for every ecosystem member that's here, right? So if people come into our game as Web2 users, they understand the environment, we're able to introduce them to Web3, then using kind of our technology, we're able to then bring them into the rest of the projects in the ecosystem, right? And so you'll have fantasy users, you'll have online predictors, you have Web3 gamers, you have Web2 gamers coming into EXR. If our EXR race sponsors, which we already have a number of them, come in, they're then able to, distribute their rewards to prize winners, right? So you might be able to have currencies, you can give out collectibles, you can educate new users, you can have videos, interstitials coming in, teaching you a little bit about what the technology is, closing that knowledge gap between a Web2 user and a Web3 user, right? And then also at the same time building your community, right? Like I've been mentioning before, right? Engaging and growing your community, and as users come and enjoy this community of EXR, they're going to be more inclined to adopt and use Web3 or use your app if you're a sponsor. And it's already working. We have a number of our sponsors for our first 4 tournaments. Moonbeam and Polkadot, obviously. But this middle layer of Zeitgeist, Exiled, and Biconomy are both sponsors, but then they're also providers for us, right? So Zeitgeist is our predictions provider, Exiled for our cross-chain provider, Biconomy for gasless transactions, and then DAM and Prime using us as a sponsored way to get more eyeballs and more users into their ecosystem. And that's really like, would you ever imagine a Web2 person who knew what a DeFi protocol was? Probably not. But using EXR in a certain way, you're going to be able to then break that barrier, close that knowledge gap, and show off your products to a whole new audience. I think I only have a couple minutes, so why don't we get to the actual live racing? Hopefully everyone has gotten their predictions in. All right. So here's our prediction watching screen. It looks like 4 people have picked RacerDev to win first. That's actually me. So only 2 people picked me. You guys should have been more. Nadine, Pharrell, and BLR, right? So let's go ahead and watch this. And this is basically a live race that's happening right now. We're going to go ahead and simulate the results so you guys can actually watch and see who won. Here we go. I'll be pointing out things throughout the race so that you guys can get an idea of how the actual game works itself. And this is all web-based, so we're not using Unity or Unreal Engine or something like that. This is all WebGL, all browser-based. It works on any mobile phone, on any device. So you can kind of see some of our advertisements already. You see the Moonbeam logo, some of the Polkadot logos. You can see kind of where sponsors can fit into this ecosystem. The race is going to be starting in the next 5 seconds. And these worlds and these planets and things are all procedurally generated as well. All right, so here we go. I think Racer Dev was the one who had the most picks. So these ships obviously are attached to your NFTs. When you see a red streak, that means that the ship is boosting. That means it's being sentient around its surroundings. It's boosting. It's finding exactly what it needs to do to win the race. Let's change to maybe the chase cam so you guys can see from behind some of the graphics and things like that in the game. It looks like I'm in first place currently. Let's see if I win. The game will be over in the next 20 seconds, so in case your attention span is low, we've been testing this as well. All right, here we go. Final lap coming up. It looks like Racer Dev is running away with it right now. Let's see if somebody can come back in time. Okay, let's see if Nadine will pull it off. Okay, she took the lead. Okay, all right. Well, Nadine, there you go. If you predicted Nadine 1 and Racer Dev 2, you got some points there. And so you can kind of see the simplicity of the game, but then also kind of the excitement and the fun of the game. All right, and I think I'm getting let me see if I can find my browser. Let's see who actually finished in the top 10 here. Let's go to the leaderboard. All right, well, BLR, Taz, Zacket, Yay, Wolf, pretty much anybody who finished in the top 10, come find me afterwards, and you guys will have a T-shirt waiting for you. Yeah? Yes?
We don't have time for questions. I'm so sorry. Please find them in the
find
real
me
world.
afterwards.
We're actually here.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Please give him a round of applause.